but since we're going into the fall planting season, do you think you can give us a quick overhead view or recap on kind of the planting process you would do so people out there know, and you can speak to it in regards to people with the proper heavy machinery and people that don't have that, and you're kind of just finding a hole in the woods and trying to just get dirt to show to get seed on it.
Yeah, and I'd like to put a caveat on that. If you think, Clayton, where we started, when we first bought the farm we have now, it was a situation where we would find a patch either on a ridge somewhere or, down in the bottoms. We'd take a weed eater, get all the brush out of the way, and whatever we could do with a simple ATV, that's what we did. And so it was, how shall I say, less sophisticated than, having tractors available to us now and rotavators and sprayers and all that stuff. So, I think it's helpful to start with food plot for dummies and work our way up.
Yeah, sure. So, and same here. I mean, I've planted them every kind of way known to man, from a nice air-conditioned cab tractor, no-till drill, perfect farming situation to, like you said, a weed eater at best, and and a rake and a garden rake. That's all you had. So there's a lot of guys out there that and you're not fixing to do an acre or more with something like that, but you're talking quarter acre or less, and there's an awful lot of food plots that are planted out there, and that's the size that they are, 1/8 of an acre, even 1/16 of an acre, just little small patches, little small roads. And what you're trying to do is to get the best seed to soil contact as you possibly can with whatever equipment that you have. Doesn't matter what it is, from a tractor to a weed eater to a rake. You want the best seed to soil contact that you can get. You want that seed to be in contact with the ground the best way that you can. So if you're just out there, you got a little small spot, you don't have any equipment, you may not even have an ATV, you may have a hand sprinter and a hand seeder and hand tools for that matter, and you can still plant a good food plot. Now it's going to be more work on you, but you can still get that done. And one of the things that I like to do in that scenario is, even if you got a small gallon pump-up sprayer, go in and spray, that food plot wherever it may be, and try to kill whatever's there. That helps tremendously. Do that a week or two before you start the planting process, and then what you can do then, once that stuff dies out, take your hand spreader, go over that field. It may be still stuff that's knee high, but it's all dead. Take that hand spreader and go over that entire area with whatever seed that you're using. I would use a blended seed like Tecomate's Maxitract or Greenfield, because it's got all kinds of different things in there, from the wheat, oats, to the clovers, to the brassicas. All of that stuff's going to be in there, so something's going to grow. So I want to throw a lot of seed, and throw more seed than what you need in that particular situation. Maybe not too much brassicas, but definitely more wheat, more clover, that kind of thing, probably twice as much as you would think. And then once you spread that, then go over it with your weed eater. And what you're going to do essentially is you're going to help that seed to settle down to the soil, and then you're going to cover it with that thatch layer of dead grass and things of that nature, and then you're good to go. That is a great way to do a fall food plot. I wouldn't do that during the summer because you're going to have all kinds of different competing things coming up. But if you'll do a fall food plot that way, you can actually have a pretty good food plot. That same technique, you can call it the poor man's no-till, so to speak. You can do that same technique with a big food plot and a tractor and a mower or clipper or whatever you want to call it, bush hog. We call it bush hogs here in the South. And regardless what brand it is, we always call them bush hogs. So, and you can do the same thing. You essentially spray it, let that thatch layer die, go over the top of it, broadcast it over it a little heavier than normal, and then cover that with the bush hog. So it doesn't, that technique works on small food plots all the way up to the big food plot. So just depending on how you're doing it. So even if you got a little small food plot, all you need is a pump-up sprayer, some seed, and a weed eater, and you can plant a food plot.
Now, when you do that with the larger equipment like a tractor and you bush hog over it, what's your germination rate, we'll call it? Is it still pretty good?
Your germination rate's going to be less because again, it's not getting that perfect seed to soil contact. All right, so that's why I'm saying up that planting rate, by sometimes if you double it, it's okay on fall type seeds. But at least that and a half anyway. So whatever the planting rate is, if you'll add a half of that to it, normally your germination rate is probably 70%, 65-70%, which is not terrible. So, but the trick is you got to make sure you terminate it. Now you can do that in the fall and not terminate it and just broadcast it and clip over it, and you'll get some stuff to grow. But if you terminate everything that's there and make sure it's all good and dead, and then you broadcast that seed over it and then clip it with that thatch layer covering the top of it, it's already dead and starting to decompose as it is, standing up. And it actually works pretty well. So, and what that thatch layer will do, it'll help hold moisture. And, so if you get a rain on top of it or whatever, and you already got moisture in the ground, so that's a cool it's just a different way to do that. But again, to answer your question, germination rate 60-70%, somewhere around in there. That's why I'm saying add a little bit more seed to it when you put it out.
Yep.
And I think that cadence is important to understand, because I don't know that we even understood it 15, 20 years ago, that you terminate it or do your Roundup, spread the seed, and then cut it so that you have the thatch.
Yep.
I think, a lot of people, they'll terminate it, cut it, rake it, then drop the seed.
Yep. And that works fine too, but but if you're not going to till it, that's the best way to go. Now, if you're going to till it or no till it, now if you're going to run in a no till drill in, I like to clip it clean, just because that drill runs through there, a little better, and you don't get as much junk hung up in it. But even with the drill, you can run that drill through and not even clip it. A lot of folks do that. Again, it depends on how thick it is, depends on how tall it is. But there's a lot of guys that don't have a drill, and I'm going to say most people that are talking here, and I know you guys use a drill some. I rented one a couple weeks ago to get my last summer plot in here. So, and the drills work great, but let's be honest, 99% of your food plotters ain't finna have a drill. So I don't even speak to a drill, and somebody just asks, specifically for that. So if you want to do this no-till process, you're exactly right. You need to, the clipping part's the last thing that you do. And we haven't even mentioned soil amenities like lime, fertilizer, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of basic things that you can do with lime fertilizer. If you've not done a soil test, if you're going to talk to any major seed guy, soil test should be number one. Then with that soil test, you know exactly how much and what type fertilizer to use. You know how much lime to use. But as a standard, across the board, without doing it, if you will figure about a ton of lime to the acre, sometimes 2 tons of lime to the acre, and then about, just say a balanced fertilizer of, say, triple 13, triple 19, something of that effect, about 250 pounds of that per acre. If you're doing smaller than that, then you just do the math and whatever that works out to be. But some kind of balanced fertilizer, triple 13, triple 15, triple 19, something of that effect at about 250 pounds an acre, and that will help you on that particular side of things. And 2, here's another deal with fertilizer. Let me just throw this out there as well, and we haven't even talked about the process. I know you mentioned it earlier, but the process is important. Usually fertilizer, lime, that kind of stuff goes first. So I want to put fertilizer out, and even before I disc up the soil, I want the fertilizer out, and if I'm running a disc, I want to disc that fertilizer in. So if we were doing this no-till process, the same situation, I want to put the fertilizer out, then the seed out, then clip over the top of it. When you're clipping over the top of it, it really doesn't matter if the seed and fertilizer is out at the same time. But you don't want to throw the fertilizer out last because it's sitting up on top of that thatch layer. Again, you want that seed-to-soil contact both with the fertilizer and the seed. So on a normal process, let me just give you this particular picture. On a normal process of food plot planting, by most everybody, I'm sorry, I'm getting dinged over here. On a normal food plot process that I like to do, and I do this more times than not, is I go in, I spray everything, kill it down. Sometimes I don't even spray it. I just bush hog everything down or clip it all down. I usually allow that grass to die though, because green grass is difficult to disc through. That's why I'd rather spray it first and get a termination. The next week, we'll take that disc and try to work it in. But before I even disc, depending on the soil, I want that fertilizer out. So I'll get a fertilizer buggy, depending on the size, get the fertilizer out. Then I'm going to disc that soil up really good. And what that does, that puts that fertilizer in the soil at different depths of the soil. So I don't want it sitting on top, because if you put it on top, which a lot of people do, and you just get a little bit of rain and it's hot and humid, that fertilizer just creates almost like a little wall that sits on top of that soil, and it's not good for the seeds in that way. So I want it worked into the soil really well, so as that plant grows, it's getting fertilizer when it starts to grow, but it gets fertilizer throughout the growing season as well, as that plant, that root system goes into and goes down into the ground. So get the soil situated right. Once it's disced right, your fertilizer's disced up in the soil, then you put your seed out and go from there. So, and there's a lot of other ways you can do that as well. You can run a drag over it to clean it up if you have time to do that. I like doing that, knocking the clods out and all of that kind of stuff, and having that clean seed bed, then put the seed out, run a drag over it again, or a cultipacker, something to that effect. The cleaner it is, the better seed to soil contact. That's just what I keep kind of coming back to. The better seed to soil contact that you get, the better food plot that you're going to have.
Well, to your point on the lime, we got that new piece we added, and I did soil sample tests. I sent them off to the county extension office, and it came back, and everything was right about 2 to 3 tons an acre on lime, and same thing with right about in line with fertilizer in regards to the numbers you gave. And
Right.
that's stuff that I'm guessing hasn't been treated with lime or fertilizer in a decade.
Probably a long time, yeah.
Now, when you talk about fertilizer, is there an advantage to pellets versus liquid?
Well, the bit depending on when you say, so there is a foliar liquid, and then there's just a straight liquid that's similar to the pelletized stuff. So it depends on what you're talking about. Most of the time, liquid is cheaper if you have the spray unit to be able to do it, especially if you do foliar. So what foliar liquid fertilizer, which most of it is that you see on the market today for your average food plotter to buy, essentially you allow the food plot to germinate and come up, and then you go over the top of it with that foliar. And you don't have to have as much, because it's 100% intake from that plant, of that fertilizer to that plant. So I like the foliar stuff, and I like the liquid stuff, because the pelletized, and I still use primarily pelletized stuff because that's the easiest thing to get, and it's the easiest to put out. So that's the advantage of the pelletized stuff. It's a little easier to be able to put out, at least for me, with the equipment that I have. But if all you have is a sprayer, if you have a good spray unit, which you can buy pretty cheaply now at Tractor Supply for your ATV, there's great advantages for that liquid. So the liquids are just, are a little bit different. So, and most of the time the liquid's a little bit cheaper, depending on how you apply it.